people often tend to think that if they make this automatic assumption that if you're a critic of Marxism, well then, oh, you must be a free market capitalist. And or if you're a critic of free market capitalism, then automatically, oh, you must be some leftist, Marxist, Leninist supporter. So yeah, those are. But I'm saying I'm neither. I'm saying that is a false choice to be one or the other. I'm much more of a. I consider myself. I'd say I'm a pragmatic libertarian, maybe. But by pragmatic, I would say I'm just that. By that I mean I'm trying to find the best system or programs that work. And then my libertarian side says, well, as long as it does not, that those programs are not an egregious violation of anyone else's liberties and rights. But I'm also pragmatic in the sense that I'm looking for a program that does not exploit the worker, the environment, or the consumer. And that's what can happen in a very free market oriented system, because in free market economics they tend to be against pretty much all forms of regulation. But the problem there is that regulations can work to protect the consumer, the worker, and the environment, because there can be a capitalistic incentive to exploit all of those for a profit, and some capitalists will do that in order to make more of a profit. And so I think I recognize the need for regulations to rein in those capitalists that have no scruples about, say, dumping their factory waste out the back door instead of properly processing it, because the processing costs money and it takes away from their bottom line profits, processing that waste. So yeah, there's a capitalist incentive to just dump it into the stream. And so they're just a matter for them. It's just a matter of whatever is the cheapest route, whatever is the lowest cost, whatever brings down the lowers the cost as much as possible and brings up the revenue as much as possible. So yeah, I'm not a free market capitalist, and so I'm against free market capitalism in that sense. I think that there needs to be some way to measure the capitalists that don't have any scruples about exploiting the worker or the environment or the consumer. But at the same time, I'm against Marxism. The thing is, what people automatically do, they just turn they go, well, I'm against that, free market capitalism. So then they turn over to they just reflexively, maybe some of them might turn over to Marxism, because there's all these Marxists that are going, hey, here we are, we putting out all these failures of free market capitalism, and we have this whole program here of Marxism to come to the rescue. But I think that's kind of being not entirely honest by these Marxists who say that we're an alternative to all these injustices of the world of free market capitalism, because really Marxism is not about that. It's not a social justice program fundamentally. Marxism is fundamentally a philosophy of history movement. and it's like a denomination of the religion of Hegel, the philosopher Hegel, in his philosophy of history. So that, if you really once you look in depth into Marxism, you realize that is the case. It's not about social justice. It's Marxism. It's about but even if you say, well, but it's still a great program for achieving social justice. I would show that. Well, let's look at, let's again go back to pragmatically. What works? How well has it worked? And how much has it the Marxist programs violated libertarian, violated the freedoms and the rights of the citizens where Marxism has been implemented, and I'd say, well, it hasn't worked so well in that respect. There's been many manifold cases of the Marxism has violated the freedoms and rights of individuals, and also even if you say, well, maybe a case can be made, let's just for the sake of argument say that like I say, in China and in the Soviet Union, many less people starved. Even if a case can be made that in the Soviet Union and China that less people starved to death thanks to the Marxist programs, you can still ask, well, was that the best route to achieving that that end of feeding more people? Because why? That's what question I'm always asking. Well, if that's the goal, if it's feed more people, then why not just look at the best program to achieve that end specifically? Let's feed more people. But that's not. But if you look at Marx, the writings of Marx and Engels, that's not what they write about. They're not saying, oh, well, let's see, how do we feed more people? So that less people starve. Let's figure this out here. How agriculture, the land, and all this. No, it's not about that. It's not about that at all. It's all about this dialectical materialism, these esoteric ideas of Hegelian philosophy of history, of achieving this universal history, whatever that means. And so if the program, so you say you do come up with this program that does feed more people and that achieves this end of less people starve. Okay, I have to say for instance you do have this idea in mind of achieving less starvation, but the problem is it does not fit within this Marxist Hegelian idea of the philosophy of history of dialectical materialism. If it does not fit, it will be abandoned by the Marxists, because that's all that matters fundamentally to Marxism is this philosophy of history, Hegelian history. It's rather esoteric. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. This and just regardless, I mean, if that's the goal, if the goal is to feed more people, for instance, well then to find the best way to do that, a way that succeeds the most in feeding the most people, but without violating individual rights. So yeah, like you don't force people to go off into these farm collectives, like they did in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union. So that's an egregious violation of libertarian, of people's freedoms and rights, to force them off their farms and force them to move to a farm collective. So that's out. But that wasn't the consideration. Rights and liberties and freedoms. There was no consideration for that in the Soviet Union, because there's, and if you read the writings of Marx, there's no consideration for individual rights and liberties. It just does not factor in to his philosophy. There is no consideration for that. It's all about achieving this, going through this dialectical materialism, between this Hegelian idea of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. It is like a religion. Does not really ring true to me. But regardless, why go through this? Why force any program to have to, that it has to go through this filter of fitting in with this dialectical materialism idea of Marx, in order for any program, social program, whether it's to feed people or house people, why should it have to fit into this esoteric idea of dialectical materialism, or thesis, antithesis, synthesis, whatever? It seems it's a very roundabout way to achieving an end. I mean, what if we have a good program that does not fit in within this Hegelian idea? It's this Hegelian philosophy of history according to Marx. Suppose you got a great idea for feeding people and housing people, and raising the income of workers, and suppose you have this great idea that's gonna work really well, but it does not fit within the model of Hegelian Marxism, Marxist Hegelianism. Suppose it doesn't fit in there. If it does not fit, Marxists will just abandon it. They will not even consider it, because it does not fit within within the Hegelian idea of history. It has to fit within that. Otherwise, it doesn't. So that's the problem. It's the whole basis of Marxism is not about achieving social justice. It is about achieving universal history, whatever the heck that means. It makes no sense to me. It's like a religion, and I'm not a member of the religion. And I think that's a problem. Is so many people, they get into Marxism because they're social justice. I mean, I'm into social justice. I want to achieve a better world. But they're these people that are drawn into Marxism because they want to achieve social justice, and they think that they're effectively flim-flammed into believing that that's what Marxism is all about. But it's not. And I think that people just need to realize that. So if their main goal is, if people's main goal is achieving social justice and feeding as many people as possible and housing as many people as possible, then they should just look for ways to achieve that. What is the best program? Just forget about this Marxism. So, because that's not the goal of Marxism. It's not achieving social justice. And also the other problem with Marxism is it leaves the door wide open for megalomaniacs to exploit it, as we've seen in so many cases in history of such as Stalin, Pol Pot, and Chairman Mao. There's no measure. There's nothing in Marxism, in the writings of Marx and Engels that recognizes the danger of megalomaniacs, even though history before they were around was rife with examples, is manifold, of so many examples of when you give a megalomaniacs an inch, they take a mile, and Marx, he also came after the founders of the United States. And the founders, they saw very well what's the danger that happens when you give these megalomaniacs, when people in power, the danger of power the corrupting power of power itself. They recognize that because they look back in history and see, oh, there's so many examples in history of the dangers when people are given power and how they abuse it, and that's why the founders put in the Constitution. They amended the Constitution with the Bill of Rights, protecting the rights of the individual. They saw that, and then Marx he's not stupid. He's a student of history. And that's that's what Hegel's all about, is the philosophy of history. So Marx should have been able to know look back at the same things that the founders of the U.S. saw, looking back on history and read about and knew about. And so Marx knew about all that. So did Engels. So why didn't they write into their Communist Manifesto and other works? They were rather prolific writers, but all that prolific writings, I'm not aware of anything where they do the least bit of effort put into reining in the powers of megalomaniacs that might use their system, and also they don't give any credence to protecting the rights of individual citizens who just want to live their own lives as they see fit. And that's the problem with Marxism. There's no consideration for the individual. It's all about the collective whole. And I was reading Capital by Marx, and he talks about labor and how it was just. It's about he tries to make it writes about this. It's like a calculus to him. The labor of the worker. He doesn't take into consideration what the individual workers that put in that labor, their lives, their hopes, their dreams, how much some may really enjoy their work, some may very much not enjoy their work, find it drudgery. That's not taken into consideration. We go ahead and read Capital. Maybe I'll pull it out here. Maybe I'll bring up Capital here. Reading from Capital here. The value of one commodity is to the value of any other, as the labor time necessary for the production of the one is to that necessary for the production of the other. As values, all commodities are only definite masses of congealed labor time. Congealed labor time, that's what the values of commodities are, according to Marx. So it's all congealed all together, the work of all these individuals, all these human beings. He just breaks it down to this cold calculus, Marx does. Even though it's much more, he doesn't give any consideration to the lives of the individual workers, and in terms of what their hopes and dreams are and how much they like or dislike the labor or the work. It's just they're just cogs in this machine, really, and that's a problem that Marx gives so little consideration to the individual. Even though when you think of Marxism, you assume like, oh, he cares about all these workers, but not as individuals. He doesn't. Just as a whole. It's as a whole in this whole system, in terms of how they fit in within the machine of society. They're just cogs to him, to Marx. I contend. It's not a warm, caring system, this Marxism. And that's what why we saw, as a result of that lack of of caring. And we saw that in how Marxism was manifested, has manifested, and continues to manifest itself throughout history. And say, for instance, well, now we go back to Capital here, reading this, and he's talking about. Well, I'll just summarize it. In Capital, you don't have to go very far to read it. It's just early on in Capital by Marx. He talks about the making of a coat, and he breaks it down to just the labor. It's all about the weaver and the tailor, but it's no consideration is given to fashion or styles and the trends and what those trends will be. And for the owner of a business, a merchant, that would be something they'd have to anticipate ahead of time what those trends will be. And I can imagine that for a lot of people, they would not want to have to take on that risk. And that's what's not even taken into consideration, the risk of knowing, anticipating what those trends will be, and risking that, well, maybe they could be wrong. And so I think I can imagine there's a lot of workers that would say, well, in exchange for not taking on that risk, I'll just take a paycheck for my labor, and say if I'm a weaver or a tailor, and so and just in exchange for that, not getting a regular paycheck and not taking on risk, I'll just take a smaller a cut of the revenue from the sale of that coat. Yeah, but Marxism treats as though it's not possible to be a worker that's not exploited. Marxism dictates that all labor is exploited by the capitalist. And so that they're like, it's like the World Economic Forum saying you're gonna owe nothing and you're gonna like it. Well, they're telling you, the worker, the Marxists are, that you're always exploited, no matter what you think or how you feel. We'll just decide for you and say, yeah, you're exploited if you're an employee of a for-profit capitalist organization, and it's impossible not to be exploited. Even though I can imagine there's many cases have happened where workers have said, well, I'll take a smaller. I'm not going to take all the profit from the sale of the product that I help make, because I recognize that I don't want to take the risk of, say, for instance, if we're making a coat, taking on the risk that maybe it will not be a hit in terms of fashion and style trends. So I'll just I'm not going to, I recognize that you're the capitalist owner deserves to, if you do anticipate what the fashion trends will be, then you deserve to get a greater share of the sale than I would get as the worker. Just because of that, I don't want to, as a worker, I don't want to have to take on that risk. But that doesn't fit in with this calculus of Marx, that possibility. When he's talking of in Capital, it's just this very tight formula that Marx tries to make the world fit into. He's trying to force a square peg in a round hole. He doesn't realize, doesn't take into consideration all the other nuances that go into a marketplace. And a lot of the workers that might get drawn to Marxism, they don't care about Hegelian universal history, dialectical dialectical materialism. It's ironically they just want to have a fairer shake, more niceties that they can buy on the capitalist marketplace. They're not anti-capitalists, but they might be drawn to Marxism, ironically, because the Marxists are telling the worker how unfairly they're treated, but really these workers have no interest in this Hegelian ideas of Marxism. So they're kind of getting flim-flammed in a way, because the workers, I think most of these blue collar workers, yeah, they have no interest in this esoteric Hegelian philosophy of history. I mean, I got a background, academic background in philosophy, and I don't have any interest in it either. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's not intuitive. I don't know why it's become so popular. Hegel and Marx as a philosophy. I can understand people wanting more social justice. That makes sense to me. That part I understand. So that's what I'm saying is, if that's what your goal is, to achieve social justice and a fair shake and a bit more of a piece of the pie, in a relationship between the worker and the owner, then that's what you should work towards, to find out the best way to achieve that. But that then find the best way, but most pragmatic route to achieving that end of a fairer relationship between workers and ownership. So then don't go. There's no need to go this roundabout way through Marxism that fits in within this Hegelian philosophy of history, according to Marx, just to get to that end. So just eliminate that middleman. Just go straight towards the pragmatic goal of achieving a fairer workplace, where you get and more time, if you want more time off, or achieve more vacation time, better pay, all those goals. Just that's what should be the goal. I mean, just work on that as the plan. Forget about this Marxist, Hegelian, esoteric, dialectical materialism nonsense. Just go work towards achieving your social justice goals. Whatever that takes, whatever the best way to achieve that is, and doing this without violating the rights and liberties of everybody else. Keep it simple, simple and pragmatic. No need to go into these esoteric ideas of Hegel and dialectical materialism, universal history. What is all that nonsense? Just work towards a pragmatic goal of achieving social justice, whatever that route is. I hope I made my point. I guess that's enough for now. And if you're still watching, thanks for watching.